and good afternoon, Mr.
Good.
Pastor Brian.
Yes, it's gorgeous today here in Oregon.
Yeah, you know what? And you're recording outside, um,
I am.
and it's lovely. And the light above my desk doesn't work right now, and I look washed out and weirdly blue. Is that what you're seeing?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm sorry. Yeah.
yeah. Well, and especially when you compare it side by side with you, it's like something ain't right there.
Yeah, it's all right. But we know why, and it's your voice that people love to hear. So
That makes me just sad all the way around for people, really.
oh my goodness. Yes, it's absolutely gorgeous today. It feels like spring in Oregon. Maybe we'll finally turn the corner and put winter behind us. I hope so. I'm ready for summer and at least spring. This is my favorite time of year, frankly.
It's hard to beat like a 60 to 70-degree spring day that's, you know, that's sunny or just partly cloudy. You feel like
Oh,
all the options
yeah.
are available to you. It's not too hot.
Hmm.
There's an energy, and I
Hmm.
actually I love waking up in the morning because I usually get up 5:30 or 6, but I like when the light is already coming in the room.
Oh
There's
yeah.
something like I think I can
Like,
handle
well,
today.
yeah, absolutely. I agree. Yeah. So great time. Oregon for the next 6 months is like the perfect place. Yeah, the winters can be kind of dark and dreary, but oh, April through really October is just amazing around here. Anyways, so I'm happy to spend a little bit of time talking to you, and hopefully you had a good rest of your Easter and a great and a good week.
Yeah. Um, it's been pretty good. You know, Easter was just family time. It,
Hmm.
and Folks who were there in person, Vanessa and Sam were there, and
Hmm.
I got to chat with
Them.
Sam after the fact and said, "Was that pretty boring?" And he's like, "Yep." And I'm like, "Cool." He's a teenager, so I don't expect anything different, right?
Right.
Than that.
No.
So but he was there. He was singing, and
He was.
there were a lot of guests, and that
Hmm.
makes it really special. And yeah, it was just nice to kind of sit there and take it all in.
Yeah. It was a good day. It's a good day. So yeah. And I suppose we could talk about the sermon, or we could talk about something else. It's not like it's terribly revolutionary, but I certainly could. What would you like to talk about today?
Oh, well, I didn't come prepared with anything besides the sermon, but
Uh,
I'm still open to the idea of unwinding Christian bumper stickers.
mm,
Those are uh, always something I'm interested in. Well, let me share one thing real quick before we get started, because it does tie somewhat to Easter for me, if you don't mind. Um,
oh,
so
go for it.
so on Thursday, Sam got his bottom braces in. Um,
Right.
Friday, we found out that a couple of the brackets were loose through no fault
Hmm.
of our own or anything. So we went in Monday morning and to get them adjusted. And the woman who was helping asked what we did for Easter and mentioned church and stuff. And then we just got into a good conversation about church and about
Mm,
faith and stuff because she grew up in the church. She got pregnant out of wedlock when she was young,
mm,
and then she and her family, who had been very involved and really leaders at the church, were ostracized from the church, and now her parents, and I think she's 29 or 30, something like that. Her parents no longer identify as Christians, um, and all but one of her siblings also does not identify as Christians, and she won't go to church because it holds such bitter memories and for her,
yeah.
and it was tough to hear, but I was really grateful to have the opportunity to just sit and give her an audience to share that and to just
Yeah.
affirm that, yeah, it's it's fair for you to feel that way, and I hope that at some point you find a congregation, a community that where you're comfortable and allows you to go back into that and feel safe, and something that's really
Yeah.
more reflective of Christ in the world, as opposed to what you experienced at this church, which is
Right.
a pretty significant local church. And it was like, oh, that's unfortunate to hear.
Every time I hear these, I think I always feel like, really? Christians are this mean
Yeah.
every time, because I don't get that. But I know it's real. I know it happens. I'm just because it's so antithetical to so opposite of how I view things and the church that I want to have and I think we've become. Yeah. Yeah, it makes me sad that and more than and a little bit, I don't know if I want to go all the way to angry, but that the Christians are that mean and judgmental and they think they're doing a good thing, but they're not. Yeah. It's not, yeah. It doesn't communicate that sex out of marriage is not okay. They're can that's not the message they're sending.
No,
They're
it's
sending that you're perfect. Oh, you can't be here.
yeah, and it's unfortunate. There's just kind of a short-sightedness in the way sometimes folks react, and
Yeah.
what I wonder sometimes is how we get there, because I was speaking to Vanessa a little bit about it, and for folks who are listening, before we were Open Door Community Church, we were North Marion Community Church, and we went through this process of changing the name of the church, and we pulled together a bunch of candidate names, and then we sent out surveys to people who were unchurched or didn't identify as Christian to get their response to the names. And in my, let's call it arrogance, there was one name that I thought, man, this is really going to resonate with people. And I also felt, I think I'm pretty connected to people who are unchurched. I've got a lot of friends who are unchurched, and I think I understand how they're going to respond. And I was wrong. We got some surprising responses and it was
Right.
really convicting to me that I am not as in touch with people who are unchurched as I thought I was. And
Yeah.
and I think that there's a little bit of the boiling frog thing that tends to happen, that um, if we don't check our compass from time to time, if we don't have people in our lives that hold us accountable, that if we're not in the world, not of the world, but if we're not out in the world and having conversations with people, we're making some pretty broad assumptions about people that are unchurched or who are deconstructing or whatever. And I think that's part of how we get surprised.
Yeah.
You know, um,
And I think we don't do this, but we really should do more of the rather than assuming a particular view or something, go in really open-handed to try and find out where everybody's at, even if they're whether it's a Christian or another faith or anyone. It's like even if they say they identify, let's say, as a Christian, even let's say a conservative Baptist Christian. I mean, that doesn't mean we have all these frameworks of what we think that means.
mm-hmm.
But you got to ask them individually because every person's individually different, right?
Yeah.
Just
And
because
go ahead. Sorry.
doesn't mean that that's what they are.
Yeah. There's, there's such a broad spectrum of, I think about some friends who are part of a denomination that is questionably Christian. I'm not going to name the denomination because I don't think it's helpful, but they would absolutely identify themselves as Christian, and I would go, but are you? And then I'm like, okay, is that that helpful for me to question that? And there's a lot of people, that are culturally Christian, just like I grew up culturally Catholic, where you grow up in a
Right.
household that is, Christmas and Easter onlys, and they identify that way, but it's not that they're in the Word or they're trying to understand kind of the underlying theology, the doctrine. Um,
And what I'm saying is to,
yeah,
okay, so you're Christian. Okay, well, tell me what you believe. Be curious. Try to,
yeah,
okay, in rather than assuming what they believe or they think about something or their presuppositions, figure out what it is first, rather than just assuming that you know what it is. I mean, the human mind wants to take shortcuts and to jump to conclusions that they've already thought through. They don't want to have to take the energy to rethink that stuff through.
right.
So we got to fight again. And so, having someone say, "Well, I'm a Christian," like, okay, well, what does that mean to you? Right? What?
Hmm.
Oh, you believe in Jesus? Oh, great. Tell me about what you think about Jesus, right? Because you don't know, you know, and just like you can't always assume that what you're saying as somebody who speaks for a living is what people are hearing.
Right, right.
It's God terrifying from someone who talks for a living, that what I'm saying, I think I'm perfectly clear, but I know I'm not all. Frankly, I think I'm not a lot. I say things that I think I intend it to be heard this way, but it's not. So just
Yeah,
ask questions if you're not sure.
we struggle, and I want to first. I guess I kind of want to acknowledge that the way I was trying to explain myself as I reflect on it was kind of judgy, like, oh, well, you're not a real Christian because a real Christian looks like this, and I'm like, yep, that I'm not comfortable with that, and I really
Oh yeah,
appreciate the way that you explained it, which also, it's also something that being prepared to acknowledge that you don't have it figured out is really helpful to people, but it's hard
yeah,
to do that. Uh, it kind of goes to that unconditional positive regard that we've talked about in the past.
mm,
That
yeah,
um, we if we love people and you know well, if I'm going to give an example from your sermon, if you don't mind. You said something off the cuff about it, about Russian roulette,
yes,
um, and I knew where you were coming from with that. Uh, I also reflected, for somebody who may not be familiar with you in your heart, that could come across as, oh, that's very threatening, right? Um, but I know that your intention wasn't to be threatening people and where
oh
they're at
no,
with their faith, and I think it's important, and it's also easy for me to say I haven't been hurt by the church, right? I haven't
right,
I've had bad experiences, but I'm still here. Um, but for somebody who doesn't know you and doesn't understand your heart and maybe has some history, they may receive that in a completely different way. And um, I
yeah,
think
that's possible. Yeah,
I think we have to be really intentional about modeling humility and that positive regard for people. That um, if you see somebody doing something that is clearly wrong, that's one thing. If you were projecting on them, like, oh, Brian, man, why is he threatening people who don't follow Christ, man? That's what the heck is the deal with that? Like, well, he's not doing that. Um,
no, no, yeah, it's like just the consequences, not from me. It's like, okay, so you really want to take a bite of a sandwich that might have rotten meat in it and it's going to make you violently ill if you do that? Well, no. So maybe you should make sure, because just the consequences aren't good if you go, if you don't, if you're not sure about it, right? I mean, that's just what we do. You look both ways before you cross the road because that's not a good thing.
Yeah. We had
I'm not doing it. But
we had a chat
yeah,
with we had a chat with Sam after the service.
yeah,
Just actually, I think it was on Vanessa's birthday, so which is legitimately after the service. But
right.
we were just talking um, about what faith is and how it relates to religion, and specifically to how important it is to demonstrate curiosity. That
Yes.
if we well, there was Vanessa and I went to a party like 25 years ago. I still remember this, and there was a woman that Vanessa worked with who was atheist and engaged us about why, and it's
I
like,
get,
well, I mean, in the simplest terms, if I follow Christ's teachings, ignoring some of the terrible things the church has done in the name of Christ, but if I follow his teachings, I truly believe that the world is better and my life is better. So in
Mhm.
the event that for some reason he didn't die and he wasn't, didn't rise up and ascend to heaven, then I've still left the world better for myself and for people, right? And then the other side is if I choose not to believe and I find out that I'm
Mhm.
wrong, um, well, that's pretty harsh to discover that, and that's kind of where I left it. It was more kind of a teaser for look into it, and I think that's what you were saying. It's like
Yeah,
just
that's
look
because
into
the
it.
consequence of ignoring this is not ones you want. So, but yeah, yeah. If you're gonna go swim in a lake, make sure there's no piranha in it, right?
Or at least you don't have any open sores.
Right. It's because sometimes we think of this discussion about religion as just a preference, and but what if it's more than that? What if we're dealing with some actual realities, which is a little bit what I was trying to get at with the family, which was my point on Sunday, that the cross makes us our family.
Yeah,
Is like we often think of this stuff as just as a philosophy or as an idea, or it's just a theory of life, and it's like, but that's not how it's being presented. And to be real honest, if no no, or at least most of the religions, of the modern religions, that's not being fair to any of them. That's not how the Muslims view their religion, that it's just a philosophy. No, they think we're dealing with real realities, things that are going to actually happen, and so let's take it a little bit more seriously, because we
yeah,
don't, and we should. There's no more important questions in life than religious questions. In If you've come to the conclusion of an atheist's position, okay, that's still a religious question, and that's okay if you've come to that conclusion. But man, take this stuff seriously. It's a big deal.
yeah.
We're all going to die. There's in the end. Not
It's
trying to threaten.
no,
I don't know how to say that.
it goes to is it Penn Jillette, and like how offended if people have
Yes.
heard this, he's offended that more Christian, as as an atheist himself and a very intelligent man, is
Yes, he is.
offended that Christians aren't working harder if they truly believe and they are certain in their faith, why they're trying harder to convince him, or not,
Right.
and
That's exactly.
yeah,
Yeah. If our faith is what it says it is, then let's take this stuff seriously. So yeah, but curiosity, if I may swing back to that, I
yeah,
really
yeah,
love that thought about curiosity, because um, we talked. It seems like, kind of summarizing my own head. One is just don't assume certain answers, right? And so listen to carefully to what the input. Hopefully, you're not hearing these big thunks. Are you?
Yeah, but it's okay. It's not a big thump. It's more like a
Uh,
boom.
so there's that, and so, unconditional positive regard and just assuming the best intent with people. But then there's the other side of just being curious about why have they come to that conclusion. I had a conversation with someone this last week on the nature of scripture, and they have a different view of it. And in my initial response, because I feel pretty strongly about this topic, was not at all to be curious about their position, but to very forcefully present mine. And I wish I could go back, and I will, and say, help me to understand why you've come to this conclusion. And maybe there's some nuances I can learn. Maybe I can help just see the life through your perspective. That curiosity will go a long way in having good dialogues, I think.
And I love that. But you also learn something from that encounter that may not benefit that specific relationship, but will benefit subsequent relationships and encounters with other people. That's the joy of the Spirit, is that it's not wholly upon us to convince anybody. And if we engage with people, to understand more about where they're coming from. So let's say you would engage this individual in a way that was more curious. Help me understand that. And without the intention of, I'm going to swing it the other way and I'm going to turn your arguments on you.
Right.
You're not engaging in a debate. You're engaging in an interview. You're interviewing them to understand where they're coming from. But that gives you that additional context in that relationship. And then as you engage with other people, that may give you another reference point as people are like, well, this is why I feel this way. I'm able to reflect on my dad and the pain that he experienced with the Catholic faith and with the abuse that his friends suffered. I can share that with people. Not that it was something I experienced, but it's like, hey, I know people that I love very deeply who suffered trauma at the hands of the church, and I understand how difficult it can be to trust that again. Kind of going back to my conversation earlier this week, and I understand where you're coming from, and leave it as an invitation to them that, hey, that isn't everybody, that isn't everything. Not everybody is out to get you or trying to hurt you or judging you. That it kind of ultimately goes back to the idea of, if I can demonstrate love and patience with people and the word curiosity, then maybe the next person who has a conversation with them who also treats them well and shows that they care and demonstrates curiosity, that's like, well, those are little bits of convincing that come through relationship.
And just for all kinds of conflicts, whether you're talking politics or you're talking religion or relationships, that assuming the best in that person, especially when when they haven't done anything in particular, you're just assuming that based on what another person that maybe like them has done. They're not that person. So assuming that about this person in this circumstance, we got to really work against that. And then the second one of just being, asking, especially when it's asking questions and being on a discovery, exploratory, curiosity mode, is so huge. And it's really hard when you're dealing with topics that you feel very passionate about.
Yeah.
That gets harder and harder to be curious, rather than being in an attack mode, or that I'm trying to convince them, and maybe it would help me, at least. I think that me being curious and asking questions, I need to remember that in itself can be persuasive.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
There are studies that demonstrate that people come away liking you more if you ask them questions about themselves.
Mhm.
And that sounds a little manipulative or self-serving, perhaps, but um, I think people truly want to be known, and they want to
Yeah.
know that people want to know them. And if you are speaking to them in that subtext that says you're a valuable person to me, you are worth
You're
my time.
something of value to me, and I want to hear it from you.
Right. You're really pouring into them
Yeah.
in a way that in our world today is unfortunately is a bit too rare.
Yeah. This is the stuff I appreciate about you, Joe.
I appreciate you giving me an opportunity to chat about
Oh,
these things.
yeah. I'm glad you had that conversation. We need more Christians like you. So,
I got plenty wrong with me. I am trying though. I'm trying.
yeah, but you acknowledge it, and we're trying to do better. So,
Yeah.
anyways, so that's what a lovely day for a nice little conversation with my friend.
Yeah.
And I hope you who joined us were enjoyed it as well and got some good thoughts out of it.
Any previews for our first Sunday after Easter?
How do I want to say it?
You don't have to share.
Oh, we're just talking about our purpose, talking about something that will bring us peace and joy and freedom and significance to our lives, and that none of that's from us. So that there's a joy in that.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. You already got me thinking of stuff. You know? All right.
All
Yeah,
right.
I'm excited to hear it, and grateful for all of you who have joined us, whether it's live and on this Friday afternoon or as you're picking it up on your own time on YouTube or on Facebook. So thanks for joining us.
Take care.
Take care, folks. Bye.